Welcome in, everyone, to this deep dive all about life path number 19. Now, I know a lot of you listening are probably already familiar with life path numbers and numerology, but today we're going to be going a little deeper.
Yeah, that's right. We're really going to try to unpack all those little details about this number and see what makes it so special and unique.
Yeah. So, I guess the first thing to do is kind of lay out, like, what are we working with here?
Well, Life Path 19, right? It's this really cool blend of the 1 and the 9, and each of those digits brings its own kind of flavor.
Okay, so, like, what? What are those
So
flavors?
the 1 is all about independence, ambition, kind of like a trailblazer energy, right? Really driven.
Makes sense. And
Yeah.
what about the 9?
Well, the 9 is more about compassion and humanitarianism, like a desire to make the world a better place.
Wow, okay, so you've got this, like, ambitious leader, but also someone who wants to, like, help people,
Yeah.
like a superhero or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah, kind of. I mean, think about it. Someone who's both driven to succeed and wants to use that success to benefit others. That's a powerful combination.
No kidding. I
Yeah.
mean, even just reading about it, I was like, wow, this is a really interesting life path.
It is. There's so much potential there, but also some challenges. Like any powerful energy, it needs to be balanced.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, it's got to be
Yeah.
kind of tough to balance that drive to lead with that desire to serve.
Right. It's like this constant push and pull,
Yeah.
wanting to be in charge, but also wanting to empower others. It's a delicate dance.
So how does that play out? Like, what are some of the core personality traits we see in people with this life path?
Well, as you might imagine, they tend to be very independent and strong-willed. They have this natural leadership quality about them. They're not afraid to go their own way.
I bet. They probably don't like being told what to do.
Haha. Yeah, probably not. They definitely like to be in the driver's seat. But they're also usually very creative and original. They think outside the box and come up with innovative solutions.
So you're saying they're like the rule breakers,
Mm.
but in a good way.
Exactly. They challenge the status quo and aren't afraid to shake things up a bit. And that can be a really good thing, especially if they're using that energy for good.
Yeah, like imagine someone with this life path who's passionate about like social justice or environmentalism. They could make a real difference.
No doubt. And they probably would. They have that drive and that compassion. It's a recipe for making real change.
I was reading that William Shakespeare was born on April 19th.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I was like, it totally makes sense. I mean, think about his work, all that originality and ambition to like leave his mark on the world. It fits perfectly with what we're talking
It
about.
really does. It's like a textbook example of Life Path 19.
So we've got this independent, strong-willed, creative individual.
Hmm.
But our source also mentioned some potential downsides, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can't be all sunshine and roses.
Right, of
Yeah.
course. Like anything, there's a flip side to all that strength and
So
independence.
like, what are we talking about here?
Well, sometimes that strong will can turn into dominance. They might have trouble collaborating or accepting different perspectives.
Yeah, I can see that. Like they might be so focused on their own vision that they bulldoze over other people's ideas.
Right. And that independence, while it's a great quality, can sometimes lead to isolation if they're not careful. They might push people away without even realizing it.
So it's like they have to be mindful of not letting those positive traits turn into negative ones.
Exactly. It's all about balance.
Like finding that sweet spot where they're assertive but not aggressive,
Yeah.
independent but not isolated.
Precisely.
This is fascinating stuff. I feel like we're just scratching the surface here.
Me too. There's
Wow.
still so much to explore.
Well, good thing this is a deep dive.
Yeah.
And I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear more.
Definitely. We're just getting started.
All right, so we're back and ready to like dive even deeper into this life path number 19.
Yeah. We talked about those core personality traits, but there's also this whole other layer to this life path that's really fascinating.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Like, what are we talking about?
Well, it's something that our source called the hidden depths of Life Path 19.
Hidden depths. Okay, now you've got my attention.
Yeah, so it's like, you know how we were saying these people are often very independent and strong-willed? Well, underneath all that, there's this deep well of sensitivity and emotionality.
Really? That's kind of surprising. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily expect that based on their outward persona.
Right, and that's why it's called hidden depths. They don't always show this side of themselves to the world.
So, like, what are some of the characteristics of these hidden depths?
Well, they can be very intuitive and empathetic. They pick up on other people's emotions easily, and they have a strong sense of compassion.
So they're like secret softies.
Haha, in a way, yeah. But it's not always easy for them to express those feelings. They might have a hard time putting them into words or showing them outwardly.
I can see that. Like it might feel like a vulnerability to them.
Exactly, and they might be afraid of getting hurt or being misunderstood. So they kind of keep those emotions guarded.
That makes me think of like those artists or musicians who pour their heart and soul into their work, but are super private in their personal lives.
Yeah, that's a great example. They're channeling all those deep emotions into their art, but keeping a wall up around their true selves.
I wonder if that's where that whole like brooding artist stereotype comes from. Like the tortured soul who's super talented, but also kind of mysterious.
Could be. I mean, it definitely fits with the whole hidden depths thing.
So if they're not expressing those emotions outwardly, how does that affect them?
Well, it can be a double-edged sword.
Mm.
On the one hand, it can make them really deep and insightful, you know? Like they're processing things on a different level than most people.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Like they're always thinking and feeling things very intensely.
Right. But on the other hand, if those emotions aren't channeled in a healthy way, they can turn inward and cause problems.
Like what kind of problems?
Well, it can lead to mood swings or emotional outbursts. Like they're holding everything in until they can't anymore, and then it all comes out at once.
Yikes. That doesn't sound fun.
Yeah, not really. It can also make it hard for them to form close relationships. They might push people away because they're afraid of getting hurt.
So it's like they're stuck in this cycle of wanting connection, but also fearing it.
Exactly. And that's one of the big challenges for Life Path 19 is learning to balance those two opposing forces.
So how do they do that? How do they break out of that cycle?
Well, a big part of it is self-awareness. They need to learn to recognize those patterns and understand where they're coming from.
So like paying attention to their emotions and figuring out what triggers them.
Right, and then finding healthy ways to express those emotions, whether it's through therapy journaling, talking to a trusted friend, or even just spending time in nature.
It sounds like it takes a lot of work.
It does, but it's so worth it because when they start to unlock those hidden depths and embrace their full emotional range, that's when they really start to shine.
That's when that potential for greatness we were talking about comes into play.
Exactly. They have so much to offer the world, but they need to be in touch with their whole selves in order to access that potential.
That's such a powerful message. I love it. So how does that tie into this concept of karmic debt that we mentioned earlier?
Well, if we look at karmic debt as like patterns that we're carrying over from past lives, it could be that in a previous life, someone with this life path was maybe too focused on themselves. They might have been selfish or neglected their responsibilities to others.
So in this lifetime, they're being given a chance to like balance the scales.
Exactly. And that's where that humanitarian aspect comes in. They have this innate desire to help others and make a positive impact on the world. It's like they're trying to make up for past mistakes.
So it's not about punishing themselves. It's about using this lifetime to learn and grow and become a better version of themselves.
Precisely. And that's what's so beautiful about this life path. It's all about transformation and evolution.
This is seriously blowing my mind. I never thought about numerology this way before.
It's pretty amazing, right? There's so much depth to it.
Okay, so we've talked about the core characteristics, the hidden depths, the karmic debt. What else is there to know about this life path?
Well, the next step is to figure out how to actually live this life path. What are some practical things that people with this number can do to make the most of their potential and navigate those challenges?
That's a great question. I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear those answers.
Me too. That's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've uncovered a lot about Life Path 19, the strengths, the challenges, the hidden depths. But now I want to know, like, what can our listener actually do with all this information?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? How do we take all these insights and actually apply them to our lives?
Exactly. So what's the first step? What's the most important thing for someone with this life path to focus on?
Well, I'd say one of the most important things is to really cultivate their creativity. We talked about how Life Path 19 often comes with this, like, wellspring of creative energy.
Right, like they're just bursting with ideas and inspiration.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's so important for them to find outlets for that energy, whether it's through art, music, writing, whatever speaks to them.
Yeah, it's like they need to give those creative impulses a way to express themselves.
Right, because if they don't, it can kind of backfire. That energy needs to go somewhere.
So it's not just about like having fun or being entertained. It's actually like a crucial part of their well-being.
Exactly. It's like food for their soul. They need to create in order to feel whole and balanced.
So what are some ways that people with this life path can tap into their creativity?
Well, I think it's important to try different things and see what resonates with them. Don't be afraid to experiment and get messy.
Yeah. Like, don't worry about being good at it. Just have fun and see what happens.
Right. It's all about the process, not the product. And sometimes the most unexpected things can spark our creativity.
Like maybe someone's always wanted to paint, but they've never tried it. So they take a class or just start messing around with some watercolors, and suddenly they're hooked.
Exactly. Or maybe they start a journal and realize they have a knack for writing. Or they take a dance class and discover a hidden talent for movement.
So it's really about being open to new experiences and seeing where they lead.
Yes. And not putting too much pressure on themselves to be perfect or to create something amazing right away.
Just let the creativity flow.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got creativity. What else?
Well, another big one is to really embrace their individuality. Life Path 19 is all about being a trailblazer, forging your own path.
Right, like they're not afraid to stand out from the crowd.
Exactly. And they shouldn't be. The world needs more people who are willing to be themselves and do things their own way.
Yeah, it's like that whole be the change you want to see in the world thing.
Exactly. And people with this life path, they have that potential to inspire others by just being themselves.
So it's not about trying to fit in or conform to expectations.
Nope. It's about embracing what makes you unique and using that to your advantage.
So if someone's always felt like a bit of an outsider or like they don't quite belong, this life path is like a permission slip to be like, yep, that's me, and I'm proud of it.
Exactly. And they should be. Their uniqueness is their superpower.
I love that. Okay, so we've got creativity, we've got individuality. What else?
Well, this one's a little more internal, but it's just as important. And that's to cultivate self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Yeah, so it's about really paying attention to your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors, and understanding why you do the things you do.
So like being able to step back and observe yourself objectively.
Exactly. And it's not always easy. We all have blind spots, and it can be hard to see ourselves clearly.
Yeah. It's like we need someone to hold up a mirror for us.
Right. And that's where therapy or journaling or even just talking to a trusted friend can be really helpful.
So it's about getting to know yourself on a deeper level.
Yes. And understanding your motivations, your triggers, your patterns.
And then once you have that understanding, you can start to make conscious choices about how you want to show up in the world.
Exactly. And, for people with Life Path 19, this is especially important because they have such a strong personality and such powerful energy.
Right. Like if they're not self-aware, they could easily end up bulldozing over people or becoming too controlling.
Exactly. So that self-awareness helps them to harness that energy and use it for good.
So it's like they're taking all that power and channeling it into something positive.
Precisely.
This is great stuff. I feel like we're giving our listener a real roadmap for how to navigate this life path.
I hope so. I mean, it's all about empowering them to make the most of their potential.
And speaking of potential, we talked about this idea of karmic debt and how people with this life path often feel a strong pull towards service.
Right, like they have this innate desire to make the world a better place.
So how does that tie into everything else we've talked about?
Well, I think it's all connected. When someone is creative and embraces their individuality and cultivates self-awareness, they naturally become more compassionate and more tuned in to the needs of others.
It's like they're radiating positive energy outwards.
Exactly. And that's what makes them such powerful agents of change. They have the ability to inspire and uplift others and to make a real difference in the world.
So it's not just about like doing good deeds. It's about embodying that humanitarian spirit in everything they do.
Exactly. It's about living a life that is aligned with their values and their purpose.
And that's what it's all about, right? Finding that sense of purpose and meaning.
Absolutely. And, I think for people with Life Path 19, that purpose often involves using their gifts to serve others.
Whether it's through their work, their relationships, their community involvement, whatever it is, they're making a positive impact.
Exactly. And that's what's so inspiring about this life path. It's not just about personal fulfillment. It's about making the world a better place.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. What are some final thoughts you want to leave our listener with?
Well, I just want to say that if you have Life Path 19, you are a truly special and unique individual. You have so much to offer the world. So don't be afraid to shine your light. Embrace your creativity, your individuality, your compassion, and trust that you are here for a reason.
I love that. And to our listener, I hope this deep dive has given you a new understanding of life path number 19 and inspired you to embrace your own unique journey.
Me too. And remember, this is just the beginning. There's always more to learn, more to discover, and more ways to grow. So keep exploring, keep creating, and keep shining your light.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into life path number 19.
It was my pleasure.